Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Gaia Live talk story session. Just pinning a comment here. Waiting for some of you to join, and we'll get started on our talk with astrology. Hey there, welcome. Thank you guys for joining. Hi everyone, so just give me a second to set up my laptop here so I can see the comments that are rolling in. All right, hope everyone is having a great evening. It is September 11th, so I'd like to give just a moment of silence in remembrance of what this day means. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining. So I have you up here on my computer so I can see your comments. Welcome. Again, you are welcome to send us a comment or anything through and ask questions. Today we are here with Carla Sharp, who is a relatively new member of the Gaia family here, one of our practitioners. She is our prized astrologer. So we're here today just to get a little inside scoop on who she is, let her introduce herself, and get into what it is that she offers here at Gaia, and to tell us a little bit about her astrology journey and the knowledge that she has acquired from it. So let's go ahead and turn it over to Carla. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, the older you get, the longer the story. So fasten your seatbelt.
Also, everyone, can you hear me? If you can't hear us, please let us know and we'll speak up a little bit louder.
Testing.
Testing. Thanks, guys.
So there was a series of real synchronistic experiences that led me to astrology. I left Hawaii in 1972 to go to grad school at UCSF in child psychiatric nursing. And my best friend had moved there previously, and so we hooked up again. And I would go to her house sometimes on the weekends in Palo Alto. And her mother was an astrologer. And so on the weekends, sometimes we'd gather around her and she'd start talking to us about astrology. And then she read my chart one day, and it was all brand new and very fascinating and interesting, and
it is very alluring.
Very alluring.
Astrology.
Yeah. And then I was going to UCSF, the medical school campus, which is in San Francisco, up on a hill, not too far from Haight-Ashbury and Cole Street. And one day I'm walking along and I saw a flyer on a telephone pole, which is how we used to advertise.
Yep.
In fact, some of the best things that ever happened to me was from a flyer on a telephone pole in Mo'iliili.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which is where we are now. And it was an astrology class with
advertised on a
telephone pole.
Great.
And I just happened to see it, and then I had been introduced by Marie Matheny, my friend's mother, and I went, oh, well, maybe I'll do that. And it was taught by a man named Jim Lewis, who went on to become very well known as the creator of astrocartography. But once a week, we climbed the stairs to his third floor apartment filled with crystals hanging from the sunshine in his rooftop glass ceiling apartment.
The open ceilings.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so I still have those notes. So I've just been dabbling. After that, I went to the Peace Corps and I taught science in Swaziland. And I found a Dane Rudyard book there, actually in a little trip to South Africa one day.
Yes, we have a little connection with South Africa. I grew up there partially, and she spent quite a lot of time there.
Well, not too much in South Africa, but next door in Swaziland.
Right. Yes.
So it's always just been part of me, but on the back burner.
Yeah.
And I would get interested in it and take another class here in Hawaii, or read another book and then back away, because I was very, very busy as a child psychiatric nurse. And I worked for 44 years in that field, and I had a full-time private practice those years. So it was always something that was kind of for fun on the back burner. But I realized when I retire, I'm going to devote full time.
Nice.
So I retired. I stopped seeing patients in 2015, and then in 2017, I sold my practice. And so since then, since 2015, I've been taking courses with the Faculty of Astrological Studies, based in London.
Oh, wonderful.
And it's all online courses. It's a fabulous school. And so I'm really serious now and learning a lot.
Wonderful. So it's definitely opened up some new doors in life for you, I suppose.
It's really very, very exciting. I'm just now launching myself as a professional astrologer, and I've been doing some readings here.
Yeah.
And I'm crossing over a new threshold, and it's very exciting.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is that you offer here, your sessions, and yeah, we'll start with that.
Well, you can call the bookstore and...
Oh, okay. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the background music.
Oh, okay. And sign up for a reading, an astrological reading, and that can come with a written report or not. And usually the readings are about an hour and a half long.
So yeah, so Carla offers here, what shall we call it, basic astrology chart readings for an individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you have an option there to just kind of have a sit down with Carla, and she'll bring the chart. And then another option is an add-on, is you can get a written report where she goes a little bit more in depth for you about your houses, and then so it's all written down there for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I know that we kind of had some plans to get some other stuff going here.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about those plans?
Well, I thought it'd be really fun to use this room for an introduction to astrology class.
Yes,
And
we love that.
It would need to be a kind of a small group, which is nice. And I'd like to have the class based around 12 sessions.
Right.
And each session we would focus on a house and the sign ruling that house and the planets ruling that sign. So that might be a fun way to go around the Zodiac.
I think so too. And that's a great way to kind of cover the basis. So you just kind of get that really great layout of everything, the foundation there. Yeah. So definitely come on through, guys, and have yourself a reading. What I do want to talk about, though, is me and Carla have been talking about what astrology really is. And I know a lot of us kind of go into psychic readings or astrology readings thinking that the purpose of it is all the same. But for astrology, I guess a lot of us can go into that thinking that we're supposed to get some knowledge about our future, and what we're supposed to do with that. What are we fated for? But what has come to my attention with our chats is that astrology isn't a fated thing. Why don't you explain a little bit about how that works, or what is it that astrology does for a client?
Well, first of all, let's just say that there are many, many branches of astrology, and thousands and millions of different practitioners practicing in a different way. Modern astrology tends to be more psychological, and because I have a strong foundation in psychology, that's going to naturally be the kind of astrology that I want to focus on.
Right.
And in doing so, my job is to help the client understand why he or she was placed on this earth. That would be one way of framing it.
Yeah.
What their life purpose is. And not that they don't already know, but maybe to even reinforce. So many people will say, I always had a funny feeling that I'm supposed to, but that sounds too weird. Mm-hmm. And I can look at the chart and say, nope, that's not weird at all.
I see it right here.
That might be really a nice expression of that energy.
Interesting.
So it's very difficult to define astrology, and it probably means something different to different practitioners. It's a great mystery. Yeah. So I used to always tell my students, you have to love a mystery to love this work, because it's not clear what it is. My experience with it is that it really helps me understand not only my main purpose in this lifetime, and some of the gifts I have, and some of the challenging areas I have that I'm going to have to work real hard on. And when you see it that way, it helps you tackle and cope with the areas of your life that are real difficult and those that come easily, so that might be presented in your chart.
Yeah.
And so many people, like there's a lot of people around the age of maybe 18 to 21, and they're thinking, I have no idea what I want to do.
Yeah.
I'm totally lost.
And the way the world is right now, it's just, I speak for myself, I guess, when I say this, that there's so much opportunity. Everything is so open that it's really hard to choose, and it is frustrating. And when you can get kind of that layout of, okay, maybe these are some of the things that I might have issues with, maybe this is some of the things that I'll do better with, it definitely can be calming and relaxing to know that you've got this layout and you know what you need to work on.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think a lot of young people could use just a little bit of guidance. Even myself, still at this age, I still need to figure out what I'm best at. And I think that's a journey that a lot of us probably do for our whole lives.
Yes, sure. But a competent astrologer can help a young person on the threshold of adulthood really take a look at the different areas of life that they might be able to excel in or have a natural proclivity toward. And then those areas that are going to be more challenging. Let's say your parents told you have to grow up and be a doctor just like your mom.
Right.
And so the child or the young person, the adolescent, has been carrying this around their whole life, but they're not really looking forward to it. And so having an astrological consultation could open up some new avenues that they, and I've said things to people and they have responded, oh my gosh, I've always thought about that, but I never really said it out loud.
Yeah, I mean
But I always had that funny feeling I could do that. Yeah, it looks like you could. So it can be very reassuring.
Yeah.
But you asked, what is astrology? And back to that, it's very challenging. There are a lot of nice theories about it, and some of the most famous people and philosophers and psychologists in the world have chimed in on it. My favorite, since I've been studying Carl Jung for so many decades, is Carl Jung's interpretation of astrology, as above, so below.
Is that one of his books?
No, it's an ancient saying that people have known for millennia, that there is some relationship between the heavens and the earth.
Of course. Yeah.
And so in astrology, we look at the heavens as reflecting, not causing, but reflecting life on earth.
That balance almost.
Yes. And at the very moment of your birth, if you could look up and take a snapshot of the skies, you would have a very particular pattern of constellation and stars, some influenced, and planets, some influencing you more and some less. But that moment in time, that birth moment, is a snapshot of your whole life path. And it makes no sense why this should be true. It's not illogical, but it's a phenomena that has been around since thousands of years BC. The early Babylonians were some of our first astrologers who gave us the Zodiac.
And everyone that I've spoken to who has done astrology, who has kind of chimed into it, it's always really quite spot on a lot of the time.
It is, if you're careful to keep the symbolism broad. So some astrologers want to become exact, and they might say, you will get fired this week sometime. And of course that's going to instill fear and anxiety in the
that's
client.
not what you want to do.
But if somebody else saw that same configuration, they might say, it looks like there may be some challenges at work next week. If that happens, just know that it's indicated, but here's what could happen. You can learn lessons about paying attention to detail from that experience, because that looks like what the issue might be, details.
So rather giving you the tools to handle situations that will come at you by seeing kind of your better traits in I guess comparison to what maybe might be the more negative things coming up for you.
Well, and there are narrow ways to interpret something, and there are very broad ways.
Right.
And we don't know what another human being is going through. So we have to stay broad and symbolic in our interpretations and leave room for the individual to find where they fit inside that big umbrella. Yeah. So nothing is fated. You are in charge. And some people want to be guided by their birth chart, the horoscope at the moment of their birth. That's going to give them some guidance and some direction, perhaps, in certain parts of their life.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us a little bit more about, I guess, your journey or some of the knowledge? I really loved that we were chatting the other day about the book that you brought up to me, the Cosmic Mother?
The Cosmic Great Mother.
The Cosmic Great Mother. And how does that relate to the astrology that you've been doing? Where did that come into play? And please tell us about that book.
Well, I have it right here, and I should probably...
Yeah, let's see it.
The Great Cosmic Mother.
Yes, that's right.
By Monica, I don't know how to pronounce her name, Sjoo, and Barbara Moore.
Beautiful.
And I had to read this for a depth psychology class that I took here locally. And it's a lovely book, and it focuses on the development of the feminine and the matriarchy. And one of the things I learned in there was that women were probably our first star watchers.
Awesome.
Because women from ancient times have noticed the moon, the phases of the moon, and its relationship to their menstrual cycles. And so the authors point out that women were our first calendar makers, and they have found stones and bone with carved markings to mark the lunar months. And then they also have found what were called lunar sticks. And women would keep track of their monthly cycle with notches on a lunar stick. And the women that had to do it professionally were the midwives.
Of course.
So there's been midwives since time immemorial. And the pregnancy lasts 10 lunar months. And so the midwife would keep track somehow on stone or a stick how many lunar months had passed when the baby was going to be due, and so on. So
incredible knowledge that they had then.
Yeah. And so I think women probably looked up at the moon and were some of our first stargazers.
Could we call that kind of, is the moon, I guess that would be like a starting of astrology, because I always kind of looked at the lunar phases as not really astrology.
Oh, it is.
But it is.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. In fact, for some people, it's the center of astrology. The lunar phases are a fun way to get started because they change so rapidly.
Right.
And it's so easy for all of us to watch the phases of the moon.
And see the differences. Really
and see and feel the differences.
Yeah.
And how you feel at a new moon and how you feel at a full moon.
Right.
So there's a lot of wonderful astrological writing now all over the internet.
Yeah.
From Facebook to Instagram to tons of online resources. So it's really easy to subscribe to some astrologers who write lunar reports
The
of full moon.
updates there.
Yeah. And in fact, your store has full moon and
yes, I try to keep up with it. Not every month do I keep up with it, but definitely try to post on there on the Instagram so you guys can get a feel of the energies that are going on.
It's a fun way to get started.
It is, yes.
Yeah, because
tangible.
Tangible, rapidly developing, and the moon will pass through all the signs in relatively quick succession, so you can really start to learn how it feels to be in Virgo, a moon in Virgo versus a moon in Libra, for example.
And I guess, so I've always known the moon as to be kind of the more emotional aspect too. So I guess learning with the moon phases and having the signs go through the moon is definitely a really strong way to connect, because going through the moon is connecting to your emotion.
Yes.
If that makes any sense. So
Yes.
Really a direct way for someone to connect and understand that.
Yeah, it's our closest body, and so and it's so obvious, the phase that it's in.
Right.
So it would be really fun for someone just beginning to keep track of all the phases of the moon. You've got some great books about that.
We do. We have
on your
quite
shelf.
a few good ones,
Yeah.
and we also are going to we've got some of the Cosmic Mother, the Great Cosmic Mother coming in, which again talks about the up and coming of the matriarch, how women pretty much were the starters of astrology. So yeah, great book, and we'll also have that one in here. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about, well, actually, which would be a great thing to bring up here is what I did post on Instagram a couple days ago, was that Mars just went into retrograde along with 6 other planets. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, or what that might mean for someone, or looking for astrology chart readings and something like that. What would that mean?
Well, when a planet goes retrograde, it appears to be going backwards.
Right.
It's not really. It's as if you're driving up the poly highway and you're speeding up a little, and the car, and you're in the left lane, and you look in your side view mirror, and you see the car in the right lane. It appears to be going backwards because you're faster than it.
Right.
So
And it's going around that bend.
yeah, so that's the phenomena. And yes, Mars usually does not go retrograde for a very long time. And right now it's going to be retrograde, I believe, until November 9th. I might be mistaken on that.
I think that sounds about right.
But it's quite a long time. Now, Mars is a planet that represents energy, drive, physical force, action. And so Mars is a warrior. So can you imagine a warrior all dressed for battle?
Yeah.
And he's got to go backwards?
Oh, that's
It's like
unsettling.
a retreat.
Mm.
It's very unsettling. It's frustrating. And it all depends on where Mars is in your chart. Mars is the ruler of my chart. And so I'm really feeling that.
Yeah.
And so I have to be conscious of that energy. And when I see it start to come up in my daily life, sometimes I have to go, oops, never mind. We won't talk about that right now. Next.
Yeah, let that one go.
So it's not good or bad. That's the other thing I really want to reinforce. Astrology doesn't talk about good things that happen and bad things. It's all about learning how to live on this planet. And it's all food for growth. And so all the astrology that you learn is about self-development. It should come back to, how can I use that? So how can I use this Mars retrograde? One of the astrologers I follow called it, since Mars rules blood, she called it a coagulation. So instead of the blood flowing freely, it starts to clog and get coagulated. So you may find that there's something about your energy going forward that gets stuck. And your energy seems to have to go back, or you had a plan already in action and you're going to execute it, and they just said, no, it's been delayed.
Right.
And so you kind of have to stop and back up. It can have 100 different interpretations for everyone, depending on what house it's in your chart. Right. And right now it's in Aries, and where Mars is at home. Mars rules Aries, so he's very happy in Aries.
Well,
until he had to back up. So it's not bad. It's like, use that energy as a time to think about your energy, your plans, what you want to do with all your energy.
Yeah. I know that in the Instagram post that I had put up, I was reading and doing a little bit of research, of course, before I put it up there. And one thing that I saw, that someone was suggesting, that this is really a time that, yes, you're going to feel like you're being pushed back or you're being put at a halt. but take this time to work on the things that you needed to check off your list. The things that you can sit there and be like, okay, well, I did have to do this and this. And I was so trying to focus on that the past couple days with my Sagittarius and Mars, always trying to go forward. But definitely knowing that and me being able to take that time and realize, okay, maybe I'm feeling a bit frustrated and I'm not able to get where I need to. But once I took the day to do the things that were right around me that needed to be done, I felt so much better. I felt like I was on, okay, now me and Mars in retrograde are on a good vibe now.
Yeah.
Definitely for that. We do have some love here for you. We have Moon chiming in saying, she says, love you, Carla.
Thank you.
And we have Maria waving there. Thank you, guys. So I just want to make sure that you can all hear us well, and please let us know if there are any other questions. Go ahead and send them through. But yeah, Carla, so if there's anything that you want to add on to that, please do. But otherwise, let's get into a little bit about the history and the knowledge of astrology that you wanted to maybe talk about, or some other topics.
Well, astrology is very ancient. And like we said, in 20,000 BC, we know from artifacts that women were keeping track of their cycles according to the moon on bone or sticks. Astrology has evolved. I guess next would come the ancient Babylonians, and this would have been present day Iraq as Babylonia.
Right.
They spearheaded a lot of changes in astrology because they noticed that as the Earth orbits around the sun, that the sky changes, and they saw these different constellations and began to pretend they looked like animals or warriors or fish, and so the Babylonians gave us the Zodiac, and that's just the band of stars that's most readily recognizable to us. Well, we actually rotate, the Earth rotates through this field, and the line that we see is the Zodiac. So it's fun to go out at night, on a clear night, with binoculars even, and follow the moon's phases. And there's a lot more information on the web now.
There really
You can be your own astronomer. There's so much information, like Mars will be bright in the west tonight as the sun sets, and all kinds of great stuff.
Actually, last night I was looking up at the sky, and there was a really big red one that I could see, and I normally see that, and I always think that it's Jupiter, because I would think that it's the biggest and one of the more close ones that I see, but it was probably Mars.
Well, if it was reddish, it was probably Mars.
Oh, that's awesome.
Probably.
Yeah. And I know that they have those apps too that I actually have one on my phone too, where you can put it up to the sky and see the stars. Those are awesome.
It's even published in probably no one else gets the morning paper anymore except our house.
I'm sure. Well, they're still making their rounds.
But it's actually published once a month in the newspaper, and you can just hold that up and kind of track. It's really fun to do that, because Saturn and Pluto and Jupiter have been traveling in the same neighborhood for quite some time, since January. Sometimes you can see two of those pretty close up. But in Hawaii, we're always challenged because we have such a cloud cover, and finding the clear sky is can be really challenging.
Yeah. Last night was quite a clear night. I think the wind kind of blew through there early in the afternoon, and was a nice clear sky.
That's great.
Let's see if we have any questions here. Yes, I can hear you. Perfect. I know I'm so far in the corner, but we're just trying to keep our distance. We are still under lockdown, so we want to make sure we're following what needs to be followed to keep ourselves healthy and safe. But otherwise, Carla. Yeah. So we've got a big retrograde that we're in right now, and we're just kind of treading through that. And
the beauty of astrology is that once you begin to understand these phenomena, you can begin to use that energy to your advantage. So I think the whole point of astrology is to get to know your chart and get to know what areas you're going to have to work harder in to achieve success, what areas are going to come more naturally. And then the whole field of relationships. I mean, that's a big part of our lives.
And I do think that most people looking for astrology are usually the ones looking at, okay, am I going to match with this person? You know, we always see the ads on the internet. Check and see if you're a match here. Yeah, definitely a big topic for people in astrology too. And there was a book, actually, Love Signs by Linda Goodman.
Yes.
You know that one?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that one
that's a classic.
My father raved about that one,
Oh.
and he was just so impressed and kind of blown away at how accurate that was for him.
Yeah, it's actually it's actually a pretty accurate. It's general, but pretty
Right.
accurate way to look at astrology. But I was going to say that the advantage is to use your astrological birth chart as a way to know yourself better, as a way to know your strengths and your weaknesses, the areas where you're going to have to work harder, and what you were put on this earth for. I think a lot of young people get lost, and it's easy to be lost.
Yeah. I don't even think young people, I know quite a few women actually mid-age who are still kind of like, well, this was the path that I was set on. And, you know, this got me my house and it paid for my, you know, bills. But they didn't necessarily have a passion for what they were doing. And I think getting some clarity for someone who is living like that might be really great for them too.
Yes.
Open up some new doors. Yeah, astrology is really opening up. And I know Carla was saying earlier that, you know, it's nothing fated. It's something that is put forth for you to see what avenues in your life you can take, where are your strengths, what things need to be worked on. And here at Gaia, the spirituality that we are trying to promote is always in that kind of mind. So whatever it is, the spiritual things that we're doing here, it's for you to connect with yourself and see what's best for you. You know, none of this stuff is fated. None of it is set in stone. It's okay, so this crystal would be great for this, but then again, how does it feel to you? So I know Carla was saying that this is her journey with astrology, which is very psychological, but I think it has such a great bridge to spirituality in that I guess maybe our interpretation of spirituality is that it's just a connection to you and yourself, to connect to your higher self, which almost means to me connecting to your deepest calling.
Yes, and looking at your birth chart, a competent astrologer can help you look at your spiritual side, your spiritual self, your spiritual calling. Where, in what part of life is it most easily going to be manifested? What are some of the things you'll overcome before you get there? So all aspects of one's life and one's development are there in the chart. And so for spirituality, one of the things we would do is we would look to the planet Neptune and where that's placed in your chart, and what other planets are aspecting it. And we would look at your 12th house.
So Neptune, because whenever I think of Neptune, which we do have a question here, and I'll get to the question in just one moment, but Neptune always kind of, what I read about it is that it's kind of the planet of illusion.
Yes.
But so it is also representative of spirituality.
Yes.
Interesting.
A lot of amorphous things that are not concrete. Spirituality, illusions.
Yes.
Also disappointment and loss and sadness. So it's a whole bunch of things.
Yes.
But where it is in your chart, what other planets it's aspecting, or what angles of your chart it's aspecting, will make a difference in how you express it. Now, you're already going to be expressing it that way when you go see the astrologer.
Right.
But the astrologer can reinforce that and maybe even give you a little hint about something that might advance your goals.
Right.
So the beauty of understanding your birth chart and having a reading is that it really sets you on a course for your true calling, for what it is you really want to do, and the right time to do it.
That's a good thing to know.
So the birth chart is what it is, but then we can overlay on top of that the current pattern of planetary movement and how that's impacting your birth chart. So those are called transits. And we might go through a phase of life that's very difficult for a year or more, sometimes 5 years or 10 years. And the astrologer can help you understand what that was about.
Could you give me an example of what a transit is? Because I thought that I knew what it was, but so it wouldn't be like a retrograde or a Saturn return, would it? Is that
Well, Saturn return describes a certain type of transit. So
okay.
you have your birth chart here, and then you have the sky right now.
Right.
So we talked about Mars retrograde. So wherever Mars is touching your chart, that area will be.
Okay.
So it's the overlay.
Right.
So maybe Mars retrograde right now
Yeah.
is conjunct your sun. And that might be really uncomfortable. And you might even get an infection or have an illness that's causing a fever or something like that.
Right.
Which reminds me, there's so many branches of astrology, and one is medical astrology,
Oh, awesome.
which is very
Yeah.
interesting. So the transits are the current positions right now of the planets in the sky, and then synchronistically what they're touching in the same degree in your chart, and how that might feel, and what you can do with that energy. So the beauty of astrology really boils down to taking the planetary arrangements that you were born with and the ones happening now, and use that to your advantage. Know when's the best time to leave that job and get another one. When is the best time to go back to school? When is the best time for us to get married? All that can be answered.
So speaking about Mars, Jupiter. Well, we have a question here. Zodiac Carts. Zodiac Carts. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Has a question asking, stating that Jupiter is going direct. Can you address that a little bit? What that means?
Well, again, it's like the opposite of retrograde. So,
Okay.
a planet can appear to go backwards. It doesn't really. It appears to go backwards. But see, to the ancients, they thought it was really going backwards.
Right. Because that's what it looked like.
That's what it looked like. So, but it's about the Earth turning away from it. So, as a planet appears to go backwards, retrograde, it's going to reverse. And it's like when you go in reverse, you sometimes have to revisit all the places you were before you went forward.
I see.
And so you may have to redo things, and especially Mercury retrograde is the famous one, when
Yes.
you have to redo, reimagine, repair.
Stay away from electronics.
So the energy of that particular planet is
Well, when it goes direct, so that would be the opposite of a
well,
retrograde?
it goes retrograde, and then it goes direct, but there's also other subtleties in there, because the point at which it begins to go retrograde is a significant point, because when it goes forward again and comes across that point,
It passes.
that's
the-
meaningful.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of nuances inside that issue.
Yeah.
We don't usually talk about anything but Mercury retrograde.
Yeah.
But everyone seems to know Mars is retrograde now, so.
Yeah. Well, it's coming up.
Because it's not typical.
Yeah.
Well, it is typical every 2 years. I think it lasts about 6 weeks, but it never lasts this long. Many, many months.
Yeah.
So more people are going to feel it.
And so let's say a planet Jupiter, if the planet Jupiter going direct, could you say that, okay, so I know Jupiter as being a planet of expansion
Mhm.
and higher knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So if a planet like that was going direct, and let's say perhaps my Jupiter is in Sagittarius,
Mhm.
what might that mean for someone during that time? What should they be thinking about, perhaps?
Well, we
during
don't
that
want
time?
we don't want them to think they should be thinking about.
Okay, I see.
But Jupiter in Sagittarius rules higher education, long journeys, visiting foreign places, exploring your philosophy of life, among many other things. It also rules publishing. So if you wrote a book and you wanted to publish it, an astrologer might say, Jupiter is retrograde right now. I would wait until it goes direct before you contact a publisher.
So I guess it's the time where you're like, okay, you're clear, the energies are now flowing forward again.
Yeah. Now that doesn't, I don't want to overstate this. It doesn't mean you can't be successful.
Of course, right? Yeah, nothing is fading.
Nothing is carved in stone.
It's a bit of a guide map.
But some astrologer will help you find the very best time.
Right. Nice.
To try something.
We have one more question here. Would you be able to do an example of my birth chart in Mars being under Scorpio, the 4th house, 23 degrees, 48 inches? I'm not sure.
48 minutes.
48 minutes. How would you interpret that?
Well, I would not ever interpret it by itself.
Okay, you have to see in relation.
I have to see the whole chart, and
so Miss Vixen, yeah. So we're addressing your question here, and just to reiterate, so Carla was saying that it's not something that you can look at individually. It has to be in comparison.
In context to the rest of the chart.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Any other questions? Can't really hear. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Hope you can hear a little bit better. We will speak just a smidge louder. But yeah, we're coming up here to the end, so make sure you send through some questions if you got them. But yeah, Carla, anything else we can add to your knowledge of astrology, or possibly what you want to do with it more in the future?
Oh, well, that's interesting. You should ask. I do want to have classes. And I do want to do more readings. And eventually, since I was a child psychiatric nurse for 40 years, and I performed therapy with children and families for all that time, I would really like to focus on the astrology of the child's chart.
Interesting.
I would like to help parents understand their children better. If every parent could understand their child's innate sensitivity or their strengths, their areas where they're going to need extra help, what kind of education, what school would be best for them, what type of school, what type of extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
I remember a father I worked with, and he wanted his son to play football. His son was a sweet introvert who wanted to stay in his room all day watching his ant farm.
Oh, so
and the dad was just upset that he would go outside and play football with the rest of the kids. That
Right.
wasn't who he was.
Yeah.
And if people were open to astrology and they had an astrologer look at the child's chart, the astrologer, a competent astrologer wouldn't say he's going to grow up and be a blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But the astrologer might say he's going to be able to excel in this area.
Yeah.
But I would like to combine my work as a psychotherapist with children and astrology and help parents understand who is this little being that came to them.
Amazing.
What are her strengths? What are her weaknesses? Where will she need your support the most? What kind of discipline will help her learn the lesson best?
That's amazing.
And 100 other things that could be a guide. You know how they say, too bad my child never came with an instruction manual?
Yes, I've heard that many a time.
Well, I thought I'd create an instruction.
There you go. You know what? That resonates so much with myself. Because, to give an example, I love my family, and I love my mother, but we're very different. And I know, of course, we're all in families, and a lot of us are very different, like this father and his son. The father was obviously an athlete and an outgoing guy, and his son was much more attuned to detail. And
the father was a pilot.
Oh, interesting.
So the funny thing was the father was a pilot. I'm sorry to go back to the story.
Please, yeah.
But the father was a pilot and very macho, very tall, active duty military, very good looking, very strapping, and wanted to have that son out there.
Oh.
But on the last session with that family, I learned that he also liked to sew.
Oh, that's so sweet. See, there's the hidden things about people
And
that
it's
you
like,
wouldn't know.
Well, your other son who likes to watch the ant farm is kind of like that part of you that wants to sew.
That's a really awesome way to connect people too, because if you can find that subtle similarity between them, that probably really helped for their connection too.
Yeah.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wonderful story. Well, good. I hope that helped a little bit. But yeah, so I mean, what I was just saying is that I know it would have been great if even myself as a child and my mother to know, what it is I should be doing. It was always kind of a turn between the creative arts and the more kind of higher education academics, and it was difficult for kind of me to figure that out. I know that my mom, had put me in sports and stuff like that, and that was never my thing, which definitely came out very clearly after a while. But yeah, how great it would have been to be a little bit younger and put me in a Waldorf school and potentially see where that creativity could have flourished.
Mm-hmm.
Although I'm very happy where I am now, and I think this is an amazing place that I've ended up, and I'm sure this is where I'm supposed to be.
That's right.
Okay, let's see if we have any other questions. Awesome, thank you guys, they can hear. All right, guys, and yeah, anything else that we can add there?
Come on down.
Yeah, come on down, guys. We've got lots to offer. Little question: if someone did want to come, a parent, let's say, and bring their child to do a chart with you,
They wouldn't bring their child.
Okay, so
Yeah.
just be with the parent,
Yes.
and you would give that. They would give you the birth.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yes, it would just be to the parents, hopefully the both parents,
Got
if there are
it,
two
yeah.
parents in the family.
Yeah.
And the child would not be involved at all. And I wouldn't predict anything. I would just offer guidance about now.
Right.
So it wouldn't be about prediction. It would be how to nurture and discipline this child in a way that's going to be receptive to the child and healthy for the child.
Right.
And it's like if you have an introverted child, you don't send them to their room. They're happy in the class,
Yes.
But also some children have been harmed because they're so sensitive and delicate, and they get pretty harsh punishment, which can lower the self-esteem
Right.
and cause all kinds of issues.
It's like
So,
traumatizing.
It's
kind of
tailoring
situation.
how you raise your child to their innate traits, their innate abilities, their innate challenges, their innate essence of who they are. And so what's the best way to guide this little person?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Hopefully to raise a strong new generation of astrologically trained babies.
Astrologically attuned parents.
Attuned parents. There we go. Change that up. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, go ahead and send through comments if you want to schedule an appointment, or if you have any questions that you'd like to speak with Carla on your own. Go ahead and contact me here on the Instagram, or catch us on our website, or give us a call. Again, thank you so much, guys, and we're going to end our live here, and we will catch you next time. Hopefully I can bring you one of our new members of the family to get on here. Otherwise, I'll try to think of some really great ideas for our next live show. Okay, everyone, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tequila.
Thank you.